Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Thank you, Cass. Excuse me. I just want to note that the last part of my bio about playing with bands has also caused me to have tinnitus. So it's not really bad, but I would ask your indulgence if when we get to discussion that you speak clearly and loudly. I sometimes lose little bits of conversations because of that. So thank you. And Bill, it's so lovely to see you. Bill was a Zen hospice volunteer for a number of years. The topic of my talk today is joy. And it seems appropriate because this time of year, June, the summer solstice is coming up in a few days, is always a time of year that brings me great joy. I love the light, I love the late evenings. It reminds me of when I was a child playing in Scotland and Canada, and it would be light till like 10 o'clock at night. And of course, never wanted to come home. So I just bring that up because this is, just that recollection is a source of joy for me. I'm going to start with a quote by a man named John Thorne, who says, "Why we play as children is not because it is our work or because it is how we learn, though both statements are true. We play because we are wired for joy. It is imperative as human beings." And as I'm sure many of you are aware, joy is one of the Brahmaviharas, or Divine Abodes, sometimes called the Great Immeasurables, which is a phrase I really like. Qualities that are so valuable that they can't be measured. And of course, they are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And joy is often taught and translated as sympathetic joy. So it's not just joy for ourselves or for what may be arising in our own lives, but it's joy for the good fortune of others, which is a really beautiful thing because it connotes a sense of generosity at the good fortune of other people. And the Brahmaviharas are a way of cultivating these qualities. And as I'm sure you're aware, there are phrases that begin with the word may. May I be happy, may I be peaceful, if you're talking about metta or loving kindness. And with joy, it would be, may my happiness and good fortune continue. May they increase, may they never wane. And so we send these intentions to ourselves and to others. Joy is also one of the 7 factors of awakening. And these factors describe qualities or capacities that we already have. They're seeds of potential. And we're invited to nurture them, to identify them and appreciate them, and strengthen them. And they help us to free the mind from suffering and incline the mind towards liberation. I love this quote from Albert Camus. He says, "In the middle of winter, I at last discovered there was in me an invincible summer. So here we are in midsummer. There's also this connection between joy and delight. And I think those two things are very, very connected. They're very similar. And what I hope to do in today's talk is to not talk the whole time. I want to have you guys have a chance to explore your own experience of joy in your lives. And so I'm going to be sharing some of the ways that joy arises in my life, that I notice it, that it impacts me. And one of the ways that it's come up recently is a couple of weeks ago, I spent 9 days in the Mojave Desert camping with some friends. And it's in a really remote part of the Mojave National Preserve in this little canyon. It's about 60,000 feet in elevation. And it's just, this canyon is just amazing with these sculpted rocks and, everywhere. And there is in that place just this palpable sense of stillness. And I'm sure that all of you have had experiences of stillness, maybe a moment during meditation, maybe watching a sunset or looking at a beautiful mountain lake. But just these moments where everything just is very peaceful and still. And for me, those are moments of joy. And this place called Carruthers Canyon is just, it's imbued with that. You can't be there and not feel that sense of stillness. And for me, as I was there and just being there, it brought up joy. It's possible for us to feel feelings of joy and not recognize it as joy. We just may feel good or happy about something. And it was back in 2005 that I was at a long meditation retreat at the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. And I had been practicing joy as one of the Brahmaviharas. As I was meditating, I had been practicing, may my happiness and good fortune continue, and also projecting it out to others. And at that point in my practice, I had been spending a lot of time noticing my dark stuff, the difficult things, the things we struggle with. And I had been reading a lot of Pema Chodron, and of course, this is something that she emphasized, is that we have to be able to be present with, to confront the more difficult aspects of our nature. So I had spent a lot of time looking at this stuff and noting it, like, oh, that's sadness, that's anger, that's aggression. Taking note of each struggle that I had. And one morning at this meditation retreat, it was the first snow, and I went out to do walking meditation, and the sky was perfect clear blue, and the snow was white and pristine, and I just felt this sense of joy. And for the first time in my practice, I noted joy. I recognized, I said, oh, this feeling is joy. And now that seems kind of almost silly, right? But I had never done that. I had never said to myself, oh, this is joy. And the reason that this is important is that we have to, the way the brain is wired, there's a thing called a negativity bias. You may have heard of this, but because of the way we've evolved to look out for danger, is that we tend to notice and focus more on negative things than on positive. And there's a teacher and author named Rick Hanson. You may have heard of him. He's a neuropsychiatrist. He wrote a book called The Buddhist Brain. He does a lot of podcasting and stuff on Instagram. And, he points out that when we focus the mind on something, the more we focus on it, the more it develops neural pathways, it strengthens neural pathways. So you could think of this like you walk through a field every day, a field of grass. And if you keep walking the same path over time, you wear a path through the grass. And the brain is very much like that. It's the more you do certain things, certain practices, the stronger those neural connections become, and the more inclined you are to continue doing them, to continue having those thoughts. So just the act of noticing that we're feeling joy strengthens that capacity. And Rick Hanson says that you actually have to hold that thought for 20 seconds because the brain's tendency for negativity is so strong that it's going to default to that. So the longer you hold that thought of joy, oh, this is joy, and you feel it and you try to, get into the somatic expression of it and to notice how it impacts you. The more you do that, the more you strengthen your capacity for joy. I experience joy as spaciousness or lightness, expansiveness. And this is something I'm going to invite you to do in a little while, is to explore what your physical and emotional response is to something like joy, your somatic experience of it, how you experience it in your body, and what the energy of joy feels like. I have a theory I have observed in myself that when I feel a negative emotion, what I feel in my body, what I feel emotionally in my heart is a contraction. It feels like whether it's aggression, anger, sadness, fear, it feels like a holding, a tightness. You can see this in people when they manifest certain emotions. On the other hand, the more positive emotions like joy tend to feel like expansiveness, spaciousness, letting go, right? So I think this is something really important in a practice, and you're practicing something like the Brahmaviharas, when you're practicing joy, is to notice that somatic experience. Are you contracting? Are you expanding? And to really sit with that. I think it's important to distinguish between joy and happiness. And, we could probably have a whole discussion about this, and these are my own personal feelings, but happiness often to me seems like more of a state. And people sort of will ask you, well, are you happy? Or are you happy with your life? And it's a sort of overall general feeling of contentedness or satisfaction. And I think the joy is perhaps a little more spontaneous or transitory. And your experience may be different, but and this is just words, right? This is just semantic. It's how we label things. But for me, joy has a different flavor or quality than what we typically think of as happiness. Anne Morrow Lindbergh says, for happiness, one needs security. But joy can spring like a flower, even from the cliffs of despair. So I spoke about this experience I had where joy arose for me, and I actually noticed it for the first time. And what I realized in that moment is that I had been experiencing joy all along, moments of joy. I just hadn't been able to notice them or label them, consciously say, oh, this is joy. So the arising may happen, but the noticing may not. And so I like to use this tripartite distinction of arising, noticing, and cultivating. We can have joy arise and not notice it. We can have joy arise and notice it. And we can cultivate it. We don't have to wait for a spontaneous moment of grace for something to give us a sense of joy. Again, we go back to this idea of cultivating and of using the practices to reinforce the brain, the neural pathways, the tendency to experience joy. As the noticing, just that noticing, will reinforce the tendency for us to experience it. Babies are a great source of joy. My son, who's going to be 13 next month, brings me all kinds of joy, noticing him growing up, developing. But when he was about 2-3 years old, he used to do this thing where, excuse me, he used to like to throw rocks in the pond in the Stowe Lake, typical kid stuff. But what was so interesting about it is that he would throw a rock in, and then he would kind of do this thing like that every time. And I started to think about it as it was like he was being electrocuted by joy. Like I couldn't think of any other way to place that. And of course, it would bring me joy. It's like, wow, he's really enjoying that. So again, to get back to Rick Hansen, he says, recent science makes it clear your brain takes the shape from what you rest your attention on. And again, this is the power of the practices of Brahmaviharas, of metta or loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. The more you practice them, the more they become part of your regular experience. And of course, the Buddha said, whatever you think and ponder upon will become the inclination of the mind. So our minds are these amazing, malleable things. And the more we practice certain things like this, the more we're going to have those experiences. This is the Irish poet David Blight. He says, joy can be made by practiced, hard-won achievement as much as by an unlooked-for passing act of grace arriving out of nowhere. So that's getting to that point I made a moment ago. Joy is the act of giving ourselves away before we need to or are asked to. Joy is practiced generosity. If joy is a deep form of love, it is also a raw engagement with the passing seasonality of existence, the fleeting presence of those we love understood as a gift, going in and out of our lives, faces, voices, memory, aromas of the first spring day or a wood fire in winter. So I think that joy almost demands to be shared. And I think that it naturally happens. When I feel joyful, I'm much more open to people around me. I had an experience yesterday, and I went to the grocery outlet in Oakland to pick up some things. And I just noticed how I was really open and connecting to other people in the store. And I was feeling deep compassion for them, but also a sense of joy. And this was just something, it just happened. And that doesn't always happen with me. I'm like a lot of people, I'll go into a store and I'll be like, why are these people standing in the aisle? And like, come on, get your credit card out and start paying, like I get impatient. But yesterday, none of that happened. Yesterday, I was feeling a sense of joy at just the humanity of others, the simple humanity. Christina Feldman says, we can reframe joy for ourselves by thinking of it as something we can offer as a gift to the world, rather than something that we take or have to wait to receive. So I think what I'd like to do now is I'd like to do a simple exercise. And this is just, we'll do this individually. Everybody online can do this also. And so this is going to be, this first notion of noticing what we're feeling, what joy feels like. So I invite you to just put a hand or both hands on your heart. And you can close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And just start by feeling the warmth or the weight of your hand in your heart center. What that feels like, and just hold it gently there. One of the reasons I love this position of holding us like this is that it feels like we're holding ourselves with love or gentleness. And just feel the warmth. Notice any sense of love and care, almost like you were holding a child. And gently breathe into your heart. Feel the sensation of the breath. Any other sensations arising in the body. And now I invite you to bring to mind someone or something that brings you joy. Could be a pet, a child, a dear friend, a place in nature. So choose something that brings you joy. Simple, uncomplicated sense of joy. It might even be an activity or a situation or experience. Just allow yourself to inhabit that. Notice what it feels like in your body. In your heart, mind. Again, the more we can connect with these feelings, the stronger and more available they can become. Okay, and now we can gently lower our hands and come back into the room. And I'd like to just open it up for a minute. If anybody wishes to share what that experience was like, what came up for you. Maybe it didn't work at all, or maybe you had an experience of joy, or you noticed something that you may not have noticed before. So, anybody have anything they'd like to share? Yes, Clint.
I just brought back a memory. You talked earlier about a place of peace and quiet. So this is a memory I had many years ago when I was young, and I'm an avid backpacker, supposed in my state now. And I was in Sequoia National Park, and I had separated from people. I was hiking a group about 12 miles away from the road, and I came across a grove of sequoias off the side of the path. So I put my knapsack, that backpack, and walked in, and because of the canopy, there was no undergrowth, there's all just needles and dim light too. So I was walking in total complete silence among these looming shapes of trunks of trees that have been around for 3,000, 4,000 years. And as opposed to my 20-something years. And it was, even though it happened years ago, I can still literally recreate the sense of peace and joy I felt being in this environment. It's one of my special memories.
Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, redwood trees are like, they're like a cathedral.
It was like a cathedral.
Yeah.
You could just see, it could have been like columns going up instead of trunks because the light was so dim.
Yeah. And nature, for me, and I think for many people, is an ideal venue for contacting that sense of peace or stillness or joy. Yeah, and I just want to point out that the whatever joy or peace you felt was generated by your recollection, which is something that's always available to us.
Oh.
And how great is that? Anything else? Yes, Cass.
Yeah, I brought to mind a person that brings me joy, and then as you continued to talk, you said uncomplicated, and I switched to my cardio walks in the and that brings me uncomplicated joy, especially like noticing the great cultivation of flowers and bushes in Golden Gate Park. That brings me a lot of joy.
Well, you put your finger on something that comes up a lot, is that when we're practicing these practices like metta, we're trying to send loving kindness to people. You know, we start with the easiest people and we work our way to the hard, right? And the easiest people are those relationships that we have that are hopefully uncomplicated, but as we all know, some of the people that we're closest to are the most complicated. You know, family relationships, partners, right? That's where it gets really sticky. So yeah, human relationships are not simple. And so when we do practices like this, it is good if we can to choose an uncomplicated. And that may not always be that easy, right? Yeah. Yes, please.
Alex, what came to my mind was my cat. He is very cuddly, and I can see in his eyes when he's in a mood to cuddle. He comes and looks at me like, and then I say, "Yeah, come here." And then he jumps at me and starts like laying like and purring. That's quite uncomplicated and very direct, and I feel like I'm pouring inside and they're both. And it's interesting that I'm aware that he's aware that I'm aware of our connection. Like energetically, he definitely enjoys that flow of energy, and we connect very directly through the energy as two sentient beings interacting, exchanging energy. It's almost like having great sex, but nothing sexual. It's more like energy, very pleasant, sweet, circulating.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and pets can be very uncomplicated, especially dogs. Maybe cats less so. But you know, they're so loving. I believe this is one of the enduring appeal of dogs is that they're just so unconditionally loving. And so I think that's a great way to give rise to feelings of joy and connection in that way, because that's just the way they are, uncomplicated. Yeah.
Somebody on a line had their hand up.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything at this point? They withdrew the hand. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I want to just say a little bit about gratitude, because for me, I've always noticed this connection between gratitude and joy. That when I'm grateful for things in my life, it typically gives rise for me to feelings of joy. And gratitude is actually such an easy practice. It's so easy for us, for most of us, and I don't want to make a complete blanket statement, to choose to identify one or two or a few things in our lives that we're grateful for. And so I have a regular gratitude practice. One of the things I usually do when I turn out the light and put my head on the pillow is I'm like grateful for my bed. You know, I just like, thank you. I'm grateful for a warm, dry, safe place to sleep and comfortable, cozy place. Because clearly there's people out there on the streets who do not have a warm, safe, comfortable place to sleep. And I feel very fortunate that I have that. So gratitude is the joy that we feel for that which is loved or appreciated. And there are many, there's a lot of ways we can work with gratitude, but one of the best is just, you can do it at the beginning. I sometimes do it at the beginning of the meditation. And I'll just run down all the things that I'm grateful for, all the abundance in my life. And of course, we all have a mixture of struggles and problems, but we all also have many, many blessings. And so it's very easy to just shift our focus. I'm going to focus on the things I'm really grateful for. I'm grateful that I have 4 siblings that were all very close. I have a large, loving family. Unfortunately, they're all in Canada. I don't get to see them about only once a year, but we're still very close and we stay in contact. And I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful to be fully able to walk around and do the things I want to do. It's very easy for us to sort of forget how valuable these things are until perhaps we lose them, God forbid. So there's this, you could make this distinction between uncaused joy, which is this spontaneous arising of grace, and caused joy, which is we deliberately bring ourselves into a recollection of a joyful experience, or we deliberately cultivate it through a practice like the Brahmaviharas. I also think that there is a connection between joy and wonder. And I keep thinking back to what Clint shared about the redwoods, is that you cannot stand in the presence of redwoods like that and not be in awe, not feel a sense of awe and wonder. And I think that when we feel awe and wonder, again, naturally, joy arises. So I think I'd like to do another exercise. This is going to be another solo exercise, and this is, cultivating gratitude, which again can bring up these feelings of joy. So I invite you again to just sit comfortably and to place your hand on your heart, just as we did before, and recall, close your eyes if it's comfortable. Recall a person who helped you, taught you, mentored you, or surprised you with kindness recently or at some point in the past. You could alternatively bring to mind a loved one, a child, spouse, pet, anyone that you're particularly grateful for, and to thank them silently in your mind for their kindness, love, or help. You might even, like myself, have a list of people for whom you're grateful. And you could go through the list one by one, thanking them by name. Thank you for being a good friend. Thank you for the guidance, mentoring that you have offered me. But I encourage you to even say the word thank you in your mind. And to notice the tone in which you say it. Thank you. Thank you for how you've impacted my life. Thank you for what you've done to enrich my life. Again, I encourage you to notice how this feels in your body. What sensations and feelings are arising for you. Okay, now we'll come back into the room. Lower your hand. And again, how was that? Does anybody like to here to share how that was for them? Yes.
Even before gratitude is a real big source of joy and a real big part of my daily practice. But even before I was introduced to the Dharma, I would do this thing. I've been fortunate and grateful, but I haven't had to deal with clinical depression in my life. But what I did experience, and I still often do, is what I call the blues. And just feeling down, just feeling like my sails, there's no wind in my sails. And whenever I would have that experience, I just would start counting all the things I have to be grateful about. And around the time I got to 32, 33, 34, I'd forgotten what was bringing me down.
Mhm.
Two other little things. Happy Father's Day. And for all you fathers out there, wherever you may be, however you may be, happy Father's Day. I just wanted to go back to the previous subject, which where you talked about stillness.
Yeah.
And it's something that gives me a lot of joy, as I have ended up waking up almost every day, no matter what time I go to sleep, around 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And I love that time of day. And I love the stillness of it. That's what, when you said stillness. And I ran across this quote by Ruth Gordon, the wonderful Ruth Gordon, who has all sorts of wonderful quotes. It was so great that I memorized it verbatim, but I'm not going to try to do that. I'll kind of paraphrase it. But she said, she was talking about to Edith Evans, great actress, great brain. She said something once to me that just blew the top of my head off. She said, harmony, which is something I was searching for, harmony is the natural order of things. And we mess it up with our conflict and drama. So she said, I get up early in the morning when the harmony is the thickest, before anybody has a chance to mess it up. And then I get to experience harmony. And I think that's, for me, that those early mornings, there is harmony, there is stillness, there is joy. And it's just to kind of remember that, it's not trying to grasp onto it and keep it, but just it's a great place to start, every day. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my Taoist teacher used to say that the best time to meditate was just before sunrise, because that's when the psychic disturbances of the world are at their lowest. You know, people haven't woken up yet, they haven't had a chance to mess it up. Thank you. Yeah, good.
I've recently had a tsunami of dear friends dying. But I've been struck at how in the gatherings of people, there could be spikes of great joy somehow in the midst of colossal grief. People's humor and their openness, their broken heartedness makes them open to really an elixir of joy. Not surprised.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. You know, my experience of loss and grief is that it cracked me open. Like that's the only way I can describe it. It's just you feel cracked open, and in being cracked open, you feel completely vulnerable. And this is not something that we typically think of as a good thing, to be cracked open and vulnerable, and yet we're unprotected from bad feelings of loss and grief, but also from the good feelings of joy. So we're really available to everything, to all emotions. We can't defend our hearts and just sort of, you know, open them selectively. They're even open or closed, and our hearts open and close all the time. But yeah, I've seen the ways in which grief can really create a lot of unexpected grace in the form of joy. Yes.
I recently lost my beekeeping mentor, and it felt like I had lost a family member. He had helped me for like 20 years with my beehive, and when a beehive gets full, it's really heavy, and so you need help lifting it unless you're super strong. I mean, a lot of beekeepers work together, and anyway, I had so much gratitude for him. Luckily, I had expressed it while he was still alive, but he was just an amazing person, and he just gave and gave and gave. I went to his memorial, and like his son called him a naturalist, but he was a retired high school teacher. He had an amazing amount of patience, but right after he died, I was like really distraught. I thought, what am I going to do? And my beehives are in the community garden, and I had gotten an email that said, we're going to do Earth Day. And I was like, what kind of, okay, does anyone still do that? But I was like, okay, because I have a lot of opinions, but I was like, Paul would have done it. And I was like, so I immediately said, yes, I'll do it, you know, and the whole time I did it, it was very cool because people always ask the same questions about bees. You know, it was not at all stressful, but I had worked myself into a state. But anyway, I honored him, and I was so grateful, and I will always be grateful for him. So.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I think what I like to do now is we've got a little time to do a dyad. So we're going to break into groups of 2. And I want people to talk about what your personal experience of joy is, because I've been saying a lot of stuff about joy, but this is an opportunity for you to explore, investigate how it arises in your own life. So the questions that I want you to ask or to answer, and I will repeat these, is what makes you feel most alive? Because I feel when I'm in a state of joy, it's also a state of aliveness. How and when do you notice joy arising in your life? And what does it feel like in your body? So please, if we can just break up into groups of 2. And and so again, I'm gonna repeat the questions that I'd like you to try to answer. What makes you feel most alive? How and when do you notice joy arriving in your life? And what does it feel like in your body?
Some people haven't joined. It's okay. So people online who have been assigned to breakout rooms, you should be able to join a room. Everybody has been assigned a room.
So I just want to point out that if you, I didn't really give very good instructions, but I'm hoping that one person's been sharing their experience and the other person's been listening. So if that's the case, please switch. If you've been having more of a dialogue, that's fine. Just continue. We'll do it for another couple of minutes. I love the way things like this just raise the energy in the room, and I have to confess, I felt great joy seeing everybody talking away. So I'd like to take a couple of minutes now for any questions, comments. What came up for you? Did any surprises? Did you discover things that you didn't know about your relationship to joy or how it manifests in your life?
Well, I thought it was interesting that all of us know the connections we have with people is a real, that is one of the really the best possible things when it really clicks and it just really. We're all three of us kind of pull that up.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. That is an incredible connection. Is something I've been thinking a lot about in the past 6-8 months, a year. The importance of connection both to ourselves, but to others, or also to the numinous or the sacred or whatever we consider to be divine connection. Yeah, super, super important. What else?
I felt literally, when I walked in this morning, I wasn't expecting it because I was really dragging this morning. Didn't want to go across the bridge and. God, what if I were to take that parking spot? Get by, blah, 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 but I jumped in the shower quarter after 9. I left by 9:30, thought, oh my gosh, at 10. And I came in and there was this space filled with people. There must have been 5 or 6 people who I really liked. Had already set up the room and there was this great feeling and it just totally took what swept over me. And I didn't call it joy at the time. I was just feeling very grateful I get to be a part of this.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. We need human connection. Anything else? Yes.
I did, in Henry and I shared something really cool. He said that brings him joy is swimming. And I think like we had a really cool discussion about sort of like how when you get really, really good at something that becomes second nature and almost effortlessness, like that kind of like, that kind of space right there really does bring both of us a lot of joy.
Yeah, wow, thanks for reminding me. I also, swimming brings me great joy, and I'm going to be visiting my family in a few weeks in Canada, and I'm going to be swimming in the St. Lawrence River every day for 2 weeks. So, yeah. Okay, anything else before we wrap up?
Music.
Anybody online?
Of course, thank you. Yes. Music.
Food.
Cooking. Yeah. And as we're engaged in those activities, as we're engaged in listening to music, as we're engaged in making or eating food, we can incline our minds toward that feeling of joy. Again, we may enjoy something and not really put the label on it, and it seems very simple, but that act of saying to ourselves, this is joy, can be immensely powerful. Is there a question online?
No, I was just offering people online the opportunity who anybody wanted to share. And I'd also like to share, to apologize for, it was kind of a ragged experience. I saw some people weren't able to join groups, and so other people were in breakout rooms by themselves. And so I apologize for the kind of complications of the breakout rooms. But if anybody who was in breakout room has anything to share, now would be an opportunity. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Well, I would like to end with a poem. And this is a poem called Because by a poet named Rosemary Watola Trummer. So I can't save the world, can't even save myself, can't wrap my arms around every frightened child, can't foster peace among nations, can't bring love to all who feel unlovable. So I practice opening my heart right here in this room and being gentle with my insufficiency. I practice walking down the street heart first. And if it is insufficient to share love, I will practice loving anyway. I want to converse about truth, about trust. I want to invite compassion into every interaction. One willing heart can't stop a war. One willing heart can't feed all the hungry. And sometimes, daunted by a task too big, I tell myself, what's the use of trying? But today the invitation is clear, to be ridiculously courageous in love. To open the heart like a lilac in May, knowing freeze is possible and opening anyway. To take love seriously, to give love wildly, to race up to the world as if I were a puppy, adoring and unjaded, stumbling on my own exuberance. To feel the shock of indifference, of anger, of cruelty, of fear, and stay open. To love as if it matters, as if the world depends on it. So thank you so much. And may you find and identify the moments of joy in your life more and more.